Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Jay Singh, and I'm the founder of Publication Academy, your online training partner for higher ed career advancement and professional development. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today for this installment of our ongoing career pathway series, Exiting Academia. Today, we have a fascinating interview with Dr. Alex Kleinfin, who successfully transitioned from completing a PhD in polymer science into the exciting industry vertical of medical devices. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Over now to our amazing Publication Academy interviewer, Dr. Gertrude Nantra.
Well, hello everyone, Dr. G. Nantra here. And today I'm super excited to have with me Dr. Alex Kleinfin. Alex is going to be sharing with us his background or his journey into the non-academic life. Welcome, Alex.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Gertrude. I saw your post on LinkedIn, so I thought I would reach out and, talk about this.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you have taken the time to do that. So let's start with your educational background. What is your educational background and why did you choose a career outside of academia?
Yeah, so let's start from the beginning here. So, background is my undergraduate in biochemistry. I went to the University of Minnesota Morris, which is a small liberal arts school out in Minnesota. Really great, university, small class sizes, liberal arts school, and I'm a first generation college student. So, having that close relationship with professors, that really is something that I wanted and the professors could see that I had a passion for learning, a passion for the sciences, and they really encouraged me to seek education beyond just my bachelor's here. And I did incredibly well there. So then I went to the University of Akron. They have a great polymer science, polymer engineering program. So working with plastics, rubbers, that materials there. And I really enjoyed that because it allowed me to gain more of an engineering background, but all still using my chemistry and biochemistry knowledge there. So once I had, earned my doctorate, finished there, I was debating on whether I wanted to keep going in academia or industry. I was actually offered a postdoc, but I ended up turning it down just because academia, towards the end, I was pretty burnt out. I really just wanted to start my career here, and I had a mindset on industry. And talking to one of my friends, they said, if you want to work in industry, really your best thing you can do is get a job there. Getting a postdoc isn't really going to make you more valuable in that sense. And that's just his advice. Don't take this as gospel, but that's just what he told me. So, having more free time, having more work-life balance, something I wanted to, seeking something I would have greater compensation and benefits, something I wanted. And that's what drove me to, seek opportunities, outside of academia.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So what do you currently do?
Yeah, so I'm so yeah, I can talk about this here. So I'm currently a research and development engineer at Boston Scientific.
Right.
It's a medical device company in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. So there, I work on developing new medical devices to treat patients, solve problems with FDA and regulations, and use my materials background and my chemistry background here in order to write rationales, test materials, develop new materials, and get products to market.
That this is really good. So you work in the medical device industry and you work in R&D. Let's dig a little bit into that. What does a day to day? I know a day to day is probably going to be different from day to
Yeah,
day, literally. But what does a typical week look like in your life? What are you doing? Are you going into meetings? Are you doing what kind of research are you doing? Are you in the lab? Like, let's talk about what you do in your job in a week.
yeah. So one thing I really like about my job is, no 2 days really look the same. Some days I'm helping with animal studies, so those are very busy, very exciting days. Other days are helping with planning, project planning. So just tons of meetings here, trying to stand up and just, not that I'm trapped in a chair all day. Other days, I'm in the laboratory using a bit more of my background that I learned from my doctorate, analyzing materials, running tests in the laboratory, hopefully get some answers to some questions we have and then spending quite a bit of time writing documents, writing reports, organizing data here and seeing how we can get the data we gathered in order to tell a story.
Mhm.
Part of that too is also presenting our data. We have conferences within our workplace where we have poster presentations and some sessions there. I'm also, a little more related to my background, my doctorate work. I also had the opportunity to write some patents. So it's a little bit different than writing publications here. But, still that I really enjoy that because it's reminds me a bit more of, the exploratory phases of, academic research. We're coming up with an idea, you're seeing it's viable here, and then putting in a paper, and then hopefully one day being able to turn it into something that's tangible.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's varied, right? It's varied in what you do, and then that's really interesting. I remember one day somebody was saying, "Well, I wanna work outside of academia, but I feel like life outside of academia would be boring because I won't be challenged by new things." What would you say to that kind of person?
Ooh. That's a great question here. Um, you know, I hmm, there are slow days. I mean, that's part of every job, but that's how it is in academia too.
Exactly.
I, when you talk about it sounds like you're talking about like almost like a high you get off doing research, and I felt like I really had that for my first like year, 2 years, but then after that, it's more like, hey, this is a job. You come in, academia, you're quite often working a little bit later and working on weekends here, but at least in the STEMs, in the sciences. Um, if you treat it like a job and you work hard, I think that, you have a good advisor and a good plan. I feel like, you're going to be able to come out of that and you'll have something with that. So, I still have days where I have the excitement here, coming up with new ideas. I have a friend who works in my company and we're working on another patent right now. So those are good days.
Yeah.
Um, but, I still get quite a bit of excitement too. And I feel like, having the different, day-to-day work is also I really enjoy that. I'm just not tackling the same problems, and coming up with. I really enjoy that my company too has the resources to allow us to tackle these complex problems. I'm not just working in the laboratory. We're also doing animal studies, which are quite expensive, and working with patients there too.
Yeah.
So there is excitement. It is a bit different here.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, like I said, I feel like you get the excitement for the first year or two, but after that, then it becomes more routine in academia.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I work at a biotech company, and yeah, there's slow days, but for the most part, like you're just gonna get it's a job, so you're just gonna get along with it, right? Thank you for sharing
Hmm.
that. So one of the challenges that I know that a lot of grad students and academics face in transitioning out of academia is knowing where to look for jobs. Now, of course, the obvious ones are to look on LinkedIn and Indeed, but sometimes you're ghosted by those jobs. So let's talk a little bit about how you found this job that you're doing now. What were some of the pieces you had to put together to get into this position?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, I've talked to a few other people in academia just because, I like to try and share my story or give some advice to that too. I
Mhm.
feel that that is something that people coming from academia going to industry really struggle with. And for myself, especially as a first generation college student, you know, no one in my family's worked in an office even before, my generation here. So I felt that I really struggled with how do I find opportunities? How do I connect to these people? How do I build a resume that is something that people in industry want to see, not just academia? So in terms of advice, I guess one piece of advice here is, be able to, you mentioned LinkedIn, you know, reach out to people, building up that network, whether it's at a conference, whether it's, you go to, meet some people from industry. Don't be afraid to add them and, start advertising for yourself, within the first year of academia. Second thing too is don't be afraid to reach out to people and have these informational interviews.
Mm.
I didn't know about this opportunity in the medical device field in the Twin Cities at this company at the time, and I've since moved companies a couple times, but being able to reach out to people who are maybe 5, 10 years ahead of you in terms of your journey, maybe find someone with a similar background on LinkedIn, reach out to them, send them a connection, and then seeing if you can do a phone call or just interview to talk about how they got their job, how they got this opportunity. And you can ask them for network connections. You can ask them for if they have any people to reach out to or any opportunities. I
Mhm.
really wish I started this much earlier
Yeah.
and maybe pursued an internship with that.
Yeah.
Uh, I wanted to come back to Minnesota's Twin Cities because it's a large medical device field. My research in grad school is actually in medical devices, and I felt like that was a good fit. So that's why I targeted here.
Mhm.
And, once I got here, then I was able to connect with a recruiter and then find this opportunity. So
Right.
don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to find people who are just ahead of you in this academic journey, where there's maybe alumni, where there's people from your program, or maybe just, in my case, a scientist or engineer in that area, and see if you can set up a phone call with them just to learn a little bit more about their background.
Yeah. No, this is that's gold, Alex. Thank you for sharing that. One of the questions that you talked about informational interviews, and I think that that's a great tool. I use it as well in my own journey. But one of the challenges that I feel like people tell me they face is, well, I reached out to people and they haven't responded. What should I do? Or like, how do I get people to say yes to me when I send them a request for an informational interview? What advice would you give to people there?
Yeah, so I first want to just plug something here real quick. If you just give me
Mhm.
1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
So there is a book on LinkedIn called Navigating the Path to Industry by M.R. Nelson. She
Okay.
gives great advice on how to conduct these informational interviews, and I really use that for setting myself up, looking for jobs after graduation and how to write a resume. So, have a solid LinkedIn, have a presence on there, have a good profile photo,
Yeah.
and, if you get a publication or some award, have something that you can, makes you look like a human on LinkedIn, first of all. And
Yeah,
then,
I also.
then I felt that people have been people are willing to help you out. That's what I felt. Maybe I just had a good message, maybe I just had a friendly face and they're willing to respond here. But people overall, I feel like, if given time and, with busy lives, people have kids, people maybe have trips, just give it a little bit of time there to reach out. And I feel like most people are willing to do that. So taking the first step just to say, hey, I'm interested in this area. I just want to maybe a 20-minute phone call with you, something that's not a big commitment. I feel like they're more willing to help you out then. If you don't hear anything, maybe give it 2 weeks. Just shoot them maybe a friendly reminder. Say, hey, I'm really interested in talking with you. Because the worst they're going to say is no. But if you don't reach out again, then the answer is already no. So if you don't ask, you don't get anything. That's
Absolutely.
something that I really struggled with. What is appropriate to reach out to people? Like I said, because I really didn't have anyone to reach out to say, hey, is this fine to do? Is it fine to reach out for help? Just because that's not really, career advancement, career building isn't really a thing for the area I grew up in. Um, so having that book to help me, especially, I felt was really helpful to me in taking this first step. And I can send this to you too, Gertrude, after this, if you're
That would be
interested in
great.
maybe looking at this and
It's
getting some more
called
knowledge.
yeah, thank you so much. It's by M.R. Nelson, and what's the title of the book again?
Yeah, the full title is Navigating the Path to Industry, a hiring manager's advice for academics looking for a job in industry. So very appropriate for this
Very,
conversation.
very appropriate. Yes. Thank you for sharing that resource. I'm sure people watching this will go and find that book. And I also enjoyed the fact that you said that you started this in graduate school, right? You started these connections, making these connections and starting these conversations in graduate school. And I want to just emphasize on the importance of that, if you are planning on going into industry, going into government, going into consulting, it's really a good idea to start your planning in graduate school rather than trying to like finish your dissertation and then
Mhm.
career planning. So I absolutely agree with you on that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I just wanted to. I always ask people this question that you're in R&D. I work with
Mhm.
an R&D team too at my company, and what we do is very academia adjacent because we're in the labs and I'm writing papers and and submitting those. So Do you think you'll ever go back into academia or work with academia? Do you have any regrets leaving?
Ooh. Yeah, great question here. Some days when none of my experiments going right, you can kind of look outside and be like, hey, what if, what if, what if? Um, so similar to you, my company does have some ties to academia, so there is that connection there. Maybe we're not closely as tied, we're a private company. We're doing, some very confidential research here. When it comes to whether I would go back here, I could see maybe when I retire as, kind of hey, I just want to teach organic chemistry or teach a chemistry class just to kind of keep busy. I really enjoy the work-life balance that industry offers. Academia, I think even if I were to get a professorship or postdoc, I don't think I would really have that. And, one day, maybe I want to start a family. I don't know how professors are able to pull this off. And, there's always going to be sacrifices. There's always going to be stuff to be put on the side here. But I really want to prioritize myself and my health. And I feel like academia for me would have been really difficult. That's not to say that it can't be done. I have a friend who's a professor right now, and she's killing it. She's at a university that's mostly undergrad, so it's a little bit different environment here.
Yes.
And we have conversations about her work, and I get really excited about that. And I talk to her about kind of my journey, and she gets really excited about that. If I'm not saying I wouldn't ever go back, it would have to be for the right price, and there would have to be some pretty strict, barriers here. It's like, hey, I'm willing to do a little extra work here, but come the weekend, I really need time for myself and my family. Especially as I get older too.
Yeah.
I think that's especially important. When you're young in your 20s, I feel like you can put that to the side. But as I get older here, I really value having time for my friends, having time for my family, having time for my hobbies too.
Yeah.
And I felt that especially with universities now have either closing down or shrinking, it's only going to get harder to get this professorship, to get this coveted position. And even then, you might end up somewhere where you don't want to live in some far off part of the country.
Yeah.
Industry was nice about that because I could target the Twin Cities, I could target maybe East or West Coast here. There's a little
Yeah.
more flexibility in that sense.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things that I'm always sharing with people is exactly what you hit on. I always say, what do you want your life to look like, right? In choosing a career
Mhm.
path, and it's not that academia is right or wrong, but like you just said it so perfectly. You have to determine what you value, right? And you mentioned the fact that you value the relationships in your life, and you wanted time for those, and you are looking at academia and it's like, maybe it's not going to give me that. And so, and then I took this path. Then you also have the location thing, right? Sometimes you'll get a great position, but maybe in a part of the country you don't necessarily want to move to, or that don't
Right.
doesn't have as many opportunities. So this is so good that you shared that. I really appreciate that, because sometimes I think we think about all the technical pieces of our career, but we don't think of the other things, like how does this impact my social life, right? And so thank you so much for sharing that. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. That's
Yeah. I was actually looking at my Google Photos the other day, and like I had a photo from today, and it's like it was 10 p.m. and I'm still in lab, and I'm like, oh my God, like now that I'm older, I think it'd be very difficult to do that here too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's great. That's great. So we're slowly coming to the end of our conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
mhm,
So for somebody that is a chemistry student right now, maybe they're getting their PhD in chemistry or polymer science, polymer
mhm.
engineering, like you did, and they want to do something like you're doing, what advice would you give them as they make that move, or they think about that shift?
Yeah. So if I could go back and talk to, anyone in the sciences or even like a younger version of myself, there's a couple pieces of advice that I would just give them first of all. I would have a conversation with your advisor if you want to go into industry, especially see if you can afford time for a summer internship. I feel like that would be very valuable to have, and it kind of shows to companies, hey, this person isn't just working in academia. They have this industry background. It's a great way to build these connections too. Either you'll be at this company later on, or you'll have another opportunity somewhere else. And having this more work experience is, very valuable. I feel like I worked many more hours in my PhD. And for some companies and industry and some managers who maybe don't have as much background in that, I feel like that's a little bit hard for them to understand. You're not just being a college student, you're not partying on Thursday nights, you're in the laboratory running experiments. The only difference is, you're in an academic environment versus industry. And having some industry ties, maybe through a project of yours in grad school, having an internship, I feel like is something to kind of just show, hey, I can do more work outside of academia. I would also encourage people to start reaching out, from the first year, people in your industry. I didn't quite know I wanted to go into medical devices, so I would have become more of a scatter shot. But
Mhm.
having a presence on LinkedIn, advertising, hey, I got this great paper out, or I went to this conference, I feel like is good to start building your network here. And I would start even having these conversations, with people from industry, maybe once a month here, if you can, just having this informational interview, um, from the second year onwards, just to try and start building up this network here. Maybe it's a mentor you can reach out to say, just do a progress report. I've had some people from, especially someone who's been through a PhD or maybe a master's, they can understand everything you've been through. They've been through this journey, and I feel like they can also offer advice. So reach out to people who maybe have made this transition already. Reach out to someone who is in industry, and try and keep a regular contact with them. And then also have a presence on LinkedIn and reach out for, try and get an internship if you can. I didn't do one, but my project had close ties to industry. So I had that benefit to help me too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's gold advice. Reach out early, take advantage of opportunities and seek experiences, and just really be
Mhm.
open. I love what you said about if you hadn't done the informational interviews, you wouldn't have necessarily learned about the fact that you were interested in medical devices. And this is such a good thing to know, because medical
Mhm.
devices is going to be slightly different from pharma, and it's going to be different from biotech. I mean, the roles may be similar, but understanding what the industry even is such an important thing. And sometimes you won't find out until you've had these conversations. This is such a great, this was so great, Alex. I really appreciate you
Mhm.
chatting with me.
Yeah, yeah, happy to help. I've lost touch with some people too, and I've talked to numerous people, but I do think back on, even a 20-minute conversation I had with someone I thought was really helpful and just give me the courage to reach out to people and give me knowledge about these companies too.
Yeah,
I don't think they quite realize how impactful that was, but I am really grateful for people giving me their time and, giving me the advice they've given too.
yeah. Oh, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation, Alex. I really appreciate you.